It's a gorgeous evening to go out and do a garden tour, and today we're going to take a tour through my backyard. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at a couple garden projects that we were able to check off the list this summer. These projects have been years in the waiting, and I'm so glad that the boys were able to come down and get them taken care of. So we'll go ahead and show you those. Also, the hardy hydrangeas are looking fantastic right now. They are starting to turn into their bright, fiery reddish pink colors. So we'll take a look at those. And there's also quite a few of our tall phlox that are just really gorgeous right now. So let's go ahead and take a walk through the garden. Before we head out back and check out those various things I was talking about, I want to just give you a quick update here on the front of the house. Things have filled out and are just looking like a jungle here. And I guess that's a good thing because that means that things are still looking good. Here is the Shadow Storm sweet potato vine. Look at that. That is just really done fantastic this year. This is a new variety for 2026, something I would definitely keep in mind if you're looking for a unique and different looking sweet potato vine. It's giving you both that dark color and the bright green all in one plant. So that's been really fun. The Vista, or the mini Vista, this is the pink cloud. This has really performed nicely, not only here in my planters at home, but in the greenhouse as well. So this has been a great plant for both planters and ground plantings. Pink grapefruit is getting a little fizzled out at this point in the season. But I mean, there's so much competition in this pot that it's understandable to see why that plant has really been pushed aside. It was doing great all summer long, but now that we're here later in the season, it's not able to compete with some of those monsters that are in the container. New for 2026 also is the Supertunia Vista Cool Jazz. And Cool Jazz is a lighter variation, a lighter color of jazzberry. And look at these plants. They are at least 3 foot wide. This is 5 plants that were planted. So there is a 10-inch pot that we buried in the ground. In that 10-inch pot, we planted one 4.5-inch annual, and that would be the size that we would ship to you or you'd pick up in our garden center. So 1 plant per pot. So with 5 of these Supertunia Cool Jazz, this is how much coverage we've gotten. And this is just gorgeous. I want to try to see if we can put up a picture of what they looked like when they planted, just so you can compare the growth throughout the summer. I am absolutely impressed with the habit of this plant. I would say it's very comparable, obviously, to jazzberry, which is the plant it originated from. But if you wanted to plant this with bubblegum, I think this could hang out with bubblegum and compete very well with each other. Our hanging baskets, oh, they did so good this year. I'm so glad that Rod let us do geraniums here. Typically, we would do a petunia or something like that, but these geraniums have done really fantastic. This is a new series of geraniums we carried this year. It's the Solera series, and they've just really performed nicely, and I'm loving this watermelon color. We have it planted with the Super Bells Great Punch, and then we put some of that big leaf wire vine in as well, which is just trailing over and filling out that basket. So gorgeous. The planter I did for the shade this year, I don't know. I don't love it. And obviously it's a little hard to tell because of the way the sun's hitting right now, but we have the Begonia Pegasus, which is really nice foliage plant. We put some of the Prism Pink Grapefruit in there. There's some fuchsia. I don't know. It doesn't have enough color for me this year. The plants, they're all in there, the ones we originally planted, but things are just not, they didn't disperse or I don't know, they just didn't play well, meaning like I'm not seeing the colors I was hoping to see. And it's a whole lot of that Pegasus begonia, even though that's only 1 plant. I don't know. I'm not really pleased with how it turned out this year. The super kales. So we had trimmed these back just before the 4th of July because they were cracked open and didn't look good. Within 4 weeks, they were a gorgeous ball of beauty. Then that ball of beauty kind of cracked open and didn't look so great. We didn't do anything about it. We just kind of left it go. It's put on more growth and it's just refilled out again. So Rod was saying that he thinks had we not have trimmed them around the 4th of July, they probably would have rebounded and filled out and created, this nice, big, gorgeous clump of color again. So I don't know. This was the first year with these plants. So we really didn't know what they do or how to treat them. But I don't know, all in all, I think they did okay. Even though we had to trim them at one point in time, I mean, that was fine. They rebounded quickly and filled out nicely. So I don't know. Would I plant the super kales again in a container? That's yet to be determined. But I think they're nice. Although the super tunias kind of really have a place in my heart. Here we've got the bobo hydrangeas. There's 3 of them there in front of the window. They're just slightly taller than that window, standing about 4 foot tall. And they are not transitioning as nice this year. So they've gone white and they're going a little bit brown. So part of that is because it has been warmer than normal at nights here in Michigan. And you need those cool nights to get your hardy hydrangeas to transition to those gorgeous pink tones. We do have one that is gorgeous though, with its pink tones as we head around the corner here. And this is the Quick Fire. So Quick Fire is really transitioned nicely. Quick Fire is one of the first hydrangeas to turn pink. And it's really beautiful. I'm typically not a lace cap hydrangea person, but man, this one here is it's a beauty with so much intense, dusty, hot pink coloration. Heading down, we've got more bobo hydrangeas. And these are all doing well. Again, they're not coloring up quite as I had hoped. So we'll see if they continue to color up better as the summer goes along. But they feel to me like they're getting a little bit more dried out looking than actual pink tones that we normally see. Got some hardy hibiscus in there. This is the incredible blush. This was blooming in late July. And even though these blooms they're dead, they're done, they still kind of are pretty with that lime green coloration. So they were pink when they were blooming, and this is what the spent blooms look like. So they still add a lot of interest, texture, and character to this part of the garden. Blue chip junior butterfly bush, looking really nice. I love butterfly bush because once they start blooming, they bloom for a long time throughout the summer. Got the limelight hydrangea there right in the middle. So we had gotten some storms finally, and it was really windy. And so a few of those branches off to the edge there are a little bit floppy, but all in all, for as much wind and the storm that we had gotten, it's holding its own really nicely. So limelight is going to be one of those hardy hydrangeas that's going to color up later than many of the others. So limelight has been improved. So there's Limelight Prime now, and Limelight Prime has a more compact habit, and it does color up nicer than the original Limelight. So it's more refined in its size and in its habit, and you'll see that coloration, for those of us here in the north, sooner than what Limelight usually shows. Got the My Monets, Sun Patient Red. Here is a Bloomerang Lilac. It's got a couple little blooms on it. Really didn't see a very good rebloom on this year. Part of the reason I think is because the landscapers pruned it, which I'm fine with. I want these plants to be maintained, but I think that has also kind of created a little bit of a lack of blooms here on this reblooming lilac. We're going to head out to the butterfly garden next, but before we do, we're going to sweep to the left. And for those of you who have watched my videos over the years, you may notice that something is different. Maybe something is missing. You seeing what I'm talking about here? So for those of you who've watched for many years, and many of you have asked me, Heidi, what is that big black square pad that's in the middle of your yard? And what that was it was an old pool pad. So every year we would take up a pool and put it down, and that was our pad where the pool went. And since we bought the Northern Michigan garden, we haven't had a need for the pool because we're enjoying the lake instead. So finally, this summer, the boys, my boys, were able to get out here, Logan specifically, and tear out that pool pad. So he ripped out all the blocks that were in there. He had to dig down a few inches to get rid of all the sand that we had in place here, and then just lay some sod in. So right now we're seeing a little change of color because that's the difference between our regular grass and the sod he put in. But once that takes hold, that's just going to blend in nicely and open up the yard again to a big green space. Originally, Rod wanted to rip this out and put in another flower garden, but we're so busy that to add in another flower garden just really didn't make sense at this point in time, because we just wouldn't have the time that was needed to put into that space. We also had a fire pit out back, and as long as we were taking the tractor down here and removing the pool pad, I had the fire pit removed as well, because again, that was something that we don't use that often, if ever, and it was kind of starting to, the metal was falling apart and stuff, so we pulled that out as well and just replaced that with sod. So now too, that will just create another big, wide open green space. I love green spaces in the garden, especially like when the kids were younger. It was nice because they could play baseball back here because there was enough room. And then obviously once we got the pool, it kind of broke the yard up a little bit, which I was more excited about the pool than about, playing baseball. But to have this all filled in again, this is really, really nice. And I'm just glad to see the yard not having that big eyesore in the center. We also talked about the firelight hydrangea, and look at that beauty. Oh my goodness. I would like to know how many of you who are watching today have purchased the firelight hydrangea because of my videos. I hear more often than not that I have a firelight hydrangea in my garden because, Heidi, I saw it on your videos. So if you're one of those that purchased firelight, I would just love to know it. Firelight is one of my favorite of the bigger hardy hydrangeas, and it's because of the coloration. This gorgeous, bright pink, and it's only going to continue to get brighter as we continue to go on into the fall here. But just look at that. That is just the perfect color of the hydrangea blooms. This plant is about, I'm going to say 7 to 8 foot tall. It blooms off of the new growth, so very reliable. But I will also say, if you are in a warmer climate, you may not experience these bright pink blooms like we do here in Michigan. So I will kind of put that little disclaimer in there for those of you in the South, that this might not be what you would expect if you planted the firelight hydrangea. White sun patiens, and they are just holding on fantastic. All the annuals in the backyard here are pretty much sun patiens, and that's because we can't get fertilizer back here very well. So with sun patiens, they don't require really any fertilizer to keep them looking good all summer long. Now, one thing they do need is plenty of water. So if you don't have a way to keep them watered, you'll definitely know if they get thirsty, because they'll wilt, and you'll be like, oh, my plants look like they just are dying. Well, they're actually wilting because they're not getting enough water. We've got more Bobo hydrangeas there, and those two are also doing really nice. A lot of times people freak out when they see these Bobo hydrangeas, because on a Bobo hydrangea, most of the time the description is going to tell you it gets about 3, maybe 4 foot tall, which originally when Bobo was introduced, that was the height they thought it got. But now that it's been several years since Bobo has been on the market, we're finding with just about every place we've planted Bobo that it is now about 4, sometimes 5 foot tall. So plan for a little bit more space than what the tag says on Bobo, because in our experience, they do get larger than that 3 to 4 foot. Gorgeous plant, but just make sure you have plenty of room for it. We also talked about some tall phlox that are starting to bloom, and actually these are a rebloom, and that's what I love about so many of those Proven Winner and the Party Girl, the Glamour Girl series of tall phlox, is that they bloom and then they do a gorgeous rebloom about 3 or so weeks later. I love tall phlox because they add that punch of color that I think late summer gardens need, in my opinion. Cherry cordial. This is a surefire begonia, and that is just doing really fantastic as well, with literally no fertilizer. So we just planted it in the container, and this plant actually, it's only getting watered from the underground sprinkling. So it doesn't have a dripper in it, so it's not getting direct water into its pot. It's getting water just when the underground kind of sprinkles overhead and drops down in there. So I would say this is a fairly nice drought tolerant plant once it's established, because this plant is pretty neglected compared to some of the other plants in this garden. Check this out. This is the Sonic Bloom Pink Weigela. It is reblooming, and check that out. To have a Weigela That's reblooming, and this will rebloom up to 3 times throughout the season. And it's a legit rebloom. It's not just a few flowers here and there. This is full coverage rebloom on the Sonic Bloom Weigela. So this plant comes in pink, white, and red. So if you like Weigela, but maybe aren't in the pink color tones, it does come in other colors as well. And all of them we've seen have this excellent rebloom on them. So I love it when a shrub does more than one season of color. So anytime you can get a plant, even just a plant in general, that will rebloom, and specifically with this much flower, that is awesome. This garden has a lot of Asclepias or milkweed in it. And you'll notice right here is a milkweed kind of haphazardly placed, really not where it was planted. But in this garden, because it is our butterfly garden, we do let the milkweed kind of seed itself, and wherever it lands, so be it, because that's the plant that the monarchs need as their host plant. We're going to also check here between the Weigela and the Firelight. Wow. So there used to be a Glamour Girl Phlox, and you can see she's still trying to put on a little bit of a show there. But because this has really created a dense shade canopy with the 2 shrubs, the Glamour Girl is fighting to find enough sun to grow and to bloom. So I'm actually surprised that we're seeing that little bit of bloom there. That is one thing when you're planting, is your garden's going to look different at different times of the year and at different times year to year. So meaning as your garden grows, things within your garden are going to change. So when your garden's young, you're going to perhaps have more plants that show up. And as that garden ages and things get bigger, you may find that you start to lose things just because they're losing the sunlight, or other plants are covering them up, or whatever it might be. Got our shady little corner here with our patchwork of color from the hostas. So the other day, someone was at the garden center and they're like, I just want something different for my shade garden. What can I put in it that's it's different? I don't want hostas. And I says, well, give the Aurelia Sun King a try. And the reason is Aurelia Sun King gets most of the time larger than most hostas. Now, some of those really big guys could get this big, but Aurelia Sun King gets bigger than most hostas, so it kind of stands taller and stands above them. It also has that nice bright chartreuse green color. So you can see, especially in this area of the garden here, how it really breaks up some of those greens and blues of the hostas. It also adds a little bit of texture and motion into the garden. So if you're looking for something different to put into a shady spot, give Aurelia Sun King a look. Ferns also are another great addition to shade gardens, where you can break up some of the hosta look. And I love that one there. It's so pretty looking, especially with these hot pink sun patiens. And the hot pink sun patiens back here too are doing fantastic, because they do get watered every day with our underground sprinkling. Fertilized, never, but watered daily. A few more tall phlox around here that we'll show. And this garden here, you can see, is kind of transitioning from a shady area to a more sunny area. So there's a lot of hostas in here. There's astilbes in here, even some hydrangeas. But I wanted to add a few things in that would just break it up with bright color. And so we planted a few tall phlox in. So here we've got 1 of 2 that were planted. And you can see how those tall phlox, even though they're planted with the hostas, are happy. They're getting plenty of sun from about 2 o'clock till the end of the day, and are really, again, breaking up the greens of all the hostas that are in this garden bed. Here's another one here. We do find that sometimes when the plants are planted closer to these big trees, they're a little bit smaller. And that's just for certain varieties, but I think it's because they're not getting as much nutrients or water, perhaps, because the tree roots are kind of taking away from some of what the actual plants are needing. You can see that huge root system there in that maple tree. Allium are blooming, Allium serendipity. If you are looking for a pollinator magnet, you've got to have Allium serendipity or Millennium in your garden. This is probably, this time of year, one of our #1 pollinator plants. And I love the whimsy feel of the allium. They're fun. A lot of people ask, how many bulbs do I have planted here? I don't have any bulbs planted. They don't really come from a bulb. So that's just something to point out. You're not going to find serendipity or millennium bulbs, because that's just not the way that those plants come. The daylily garden is pretty much petered out at this point in the season. When it was blooming, it was looking fantastic. Right now, it just looks like a hillside of grass, which is fine. I love when they're all blooming because it's just an array of gorgeous color. But even though they're not blooming now, it still looks like something with their long grassy blades. We changed the color of the sun patiens once we got into the corner here. And these are the purple stripe, darker foliage. They got the really deep near black foliage opposed to the green that we were seeing on the others. And I love the stripy look of the flowers. I'm gonna head into the back corner here and show you a plant that I just love. So this plant here is Henry Ayler's. It's a rudbeckia, and it's just starting to open, so it's a little hard to tell, but it's not your typical rudbeckia. Okay, so here's your typical rudbeckia, big, bright, type of flowers. This has more of a pinquill type flower. So these petals don't open. Actually, let's get in here. I think I can get in and show you a little bit better. Here's some better examples. So you can see how they're little pinquill type flowers. And I love that look for something different. Rudbeckia are great because they do give a lot of color to a garden this time of year. But I love the texture that this Henry Ayler's has in this space. Now this space in the garden is really messy. There's a lot of just everything going on, which is okay. It kind of helps keep the weeds at bay. But this is more of I'm going to say a cottage style, messy, just a whole bunch of things put together corner in our gardens. Incredible hydrangea is still looking magnificent with those really huge blooms. Now, these blooms here are pretty much at the end of their cycle. So they would be a big white bloom if they were fresh, but they've now turned lime green. They're a little bit crunchy. So this is kind of their spent bloom look. So even in that spent bloom stage with these beautiful lime green flower heads, it looks really pretty. Another bobo hydrangea. And you can see with the bobo, so this is a nice fresh bloom here. But these blooms here this year, they're kind of going brown. So I don't know, it's been a year here. The humidity is not something we usually have. I mean, we have humidity, don't get me wrong, but it's been extra this year. And I think a lot of the plants are like, forget it. We don't want to deal with this. This is the Invincible Spirit 2 hydrangea. And these were pink blooms when they were in their prime. And now they're kind of more just that lime green as well. And again, even though they're spent blooms, look at that. They still add a lot of cool interest into the garden bed. Allium millennium, almost done blooming there. And that's another one, even though the flowers are almost done, they still add some pretty cool texture. Hardy hibiscus are still hanging on with their big dinner plate size blooms. If you don't have hardy hibiscus, this is a fun one to add into the garden. And this is hardy in zones, oh man, this is coming from memory, I think a 4, possibly a 5, to zone 9. So pretty much almost everybody watching today should be able to have hardy hibiscus in their gardens. Another tall phlox that's reblooming right now. And I love the columnar tall habit that the tall phlox add. Like I said, it's great color for your later season gardens. If you're looking for something just a little bit more subtle, I love to plant white because how it glows in the night. So white is an option there as well. The last hydrangea we're going to look at is another limelight hydrangea. And this plant here has been here as long as this garden's been planted, which I think we're going on, 24, 25 years or so since we first started planting this garden bed. And that plant has been trimmed down from its 8 to 10 foot height down to 3 foot multiple times over the years. And you can see it doesn't mind being trimmed. It'll just get right back up there to where it is. So if you have a hydrangea right now and you're like, it is just too big for the space, or I don't like its habit, or I don't like its shape, go ahead and trim it. Don't be afraid to trim it because, like I said, this has been to 3 foot tall multiple times and is right back up there looking gorgeous at its 8 to 10 foot height. Thank you for walking through the gardens with me today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And if you're new to our channel, we would love it if you would subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.